Welcome to another session of The Speaking Citizen. I am your host, Mehru Jafar. I bring to you creative members of society like writers, poets, actors, and vocalists to get them to fill your life with inspiration and a positive zest for living. Our guest today is the very charming and talented vocalist Rekha Surya. She's trained in North Indian light classical music. Rekha has introduced a genre of music so special in this region to music lovers in different corners of the world. Her traditional repertoire includes spiritual music from ancient times, but which is so relevant to this day as a collective voice of all humanity. We will talk today to Rekha about Lucknow, that very special city where she grew up, and how the very unique ambience of the city may have contributed to making her music so lilting. Lucknow is where Rekha found her mentor, Begum Akhtar, who introduced her to the art of rendering a ghazal, that multi-layered and ongoing, very amorous and very poetic conversation with the beloved. My first question to you, Rekha Surya, is what is this creature called ghazal? And what is so great about a ghazal that the whole world swoons over it?
Well, a ghazal is really a very, very special genre because in just two lines, it's very succinct. In just two lines, it conveys an entire idea, an entire thought, and of course there is a very technical side to ghazal, which is that it has matla, which is the opening couplet in which the radif and the kafiya match. And then it is just the kafiya that continues the rest of the ghazal. And so the special thing about ghazal is that in just two lines, you convey an entire emotion. And also the interesting thing about ghazal is that it's not like nazam, which has just one thought, the thread of thought, which goes through the entire nazam. A ghazal has all the ashar, the couplets. Sare ashar jo hain, they are disparate, they're separate. And one sher can be talking about love, another sher can be talking about death, another sher can be talking about anything. A ghazal is really very free flowing. Of course, it started as love poetry, and then as centuries went by, other poets added to its content. So it was not just love poetry. It started as love poetry, and it remains primarily as love poetry. But it has, for instance, Ahmad Faiz, his poetry is he wrote basically nazme, but his ghazals were also very political, perhaps shrouded with with some sort of love imagery, but essentially a lot of his poetry was political. So and then there are other poets who spoke about worldly things as well, how one can get disappointed, not just in love, but just in life. So it's a very free-flowing genre of music.
And what does the word ghazal literally mean? Does it really mean addressing, conversing with a woman? Does it really mean that, ghazal?
No, the meaning of ghazal, they say that it actually came from the word ghazal, which means deer. So, and it came from Persia. So, Ghazal in itself doesn't have any meaning related to poetry. It just conveys the beauty of a deer, of ghazal, of a deer. And then the literary form of it, of course, it came from Arabia, Persia, and then finally to India.
Rudaki, I believe, in the 9th century, wrote the first ghazal.
Who did?
Rudaki.
Rudaki. From which country?
Persia.
From Persia. It's possible. I have not heard of this.
So tell us about your immersion in this genre of singing, and about Lucknow. What role did the city of Lucknow play in having shaped you as a vocalist?
Well, Lucknow primarily gave me my guru, Begum Akhtar. If I had not met her, I would certainly have not, immersed myself so deeply. And in fact, when I started with her, awwal to ye ki when I first met her, she took one look at me. I was then in my teens. She took one look at me wearing a pantsuit, and she said, "I've stopped. मैंने सिखाना छोड़ दिया है." I had gone with Dr. Faridi's Bahu, who was a friend of mine, and they were family friends. And so she had taken me, and we were both, young, trouser-clad women, girls at that time. And she took one look at me and she said, "Maine sikhana chhod diya." And then we got up. She was a very gracious woman, so she gave us tea and served us tea. And after that, just as we got up to leave, she said, "Acha kuch ga ke sunao." So she sat me down, and I actually sang one of her recorded ghazals. Perhaps it was Divana Banana Hai. I really can't remember. But she sat me down, and I just, sang 2 lines, and then she said, "Acha suno, tum aise karo," in a very deadpan kind of way. "Tum aise karo, tum kal subha 10 baje aa jao, main tumhari taaleem shuru kar rahi hu." So zahir hai fir dil mein laddu phoote. And so the next day I went and we started. And she was an amazing person, apart from being an amazing teacher. People say that if you're a great artist, you can't be a great teacher. And that's, I don't think that's really true. Because both she and Girija Devi, my other guru, they were both performers, and yet they were very good teachers. So, my genre of music, unlike how Ghazal is sung these days, so I sing, there are 3 types of singing Ghazal. One is the
Would you like to
Ghazal.
these 2 lines you sang for Begum Akhtar? Would you like to sing it now for our listeners?
Abhi nahi. But let me finish telling you that, that there are 3 types of Ghazal singing. One is, of course, the Jagjit Singh type, which is Geet Numa Ghazal, which he sang because it was easy for the lay person to listen to. And so he popularized Ghazal. That was his great contribution to the Ghazal genre, to the Ghazal field. And he contributed through this Geet Numa Ghazal. I mean, I was terribly against it when I first heard it. But, I understand, and I understood in a little while that he's at least popularizing Ghazal.
But he also
people who were only listening to Geet. And then there is the Khayal Numa Ghazal, which was popularized by the from Pakistan. So Mehdi Hasan sang a ghazal in a khayal style, And of course, then there was Begum Akhtar, who derived ghazal gaiki. जिसे हम ghazal gaiki कहते हैं, she derived it from Thumri. So because she sang Thumri, Dadra ghazal, so the music was, derived from Thumri. And in fact, she started me off on Thumri by saying that this is the kind of the mother of this genre.
So is that folk music? Begum Akhtar's style was inspired by
not folk music. No, it was folk poetry, the Dadra and the Thumri. That's folk poetry, but certainly not folk music, because folk music is just, one could just call it light music, folk music. Light in the sense as there's no the idiom is different, you know. It isn't rag based for one thing, whereas light classical um, is basically a classical style of singing. You know, you sometimes you take a rag and then you move around the rag. And I wish I did have. So you can perhaps play that YouTube thing link that I sent you. You know, that Matlab Nikal Gaya, which is, I mean, I just happened to hear this years ago on the road, and it's an old Rafi song, and I was in my parents' home in Masuri, and I just heard this on the road, and then I just got so interested by the lyrics that I wrote it down, went home, made a tune for it, and then I sing it as a dadra, for instance, you know. There's Bol Banana. So Bol Banana is what this genre is based on, Meru. It's based on this concept of taking a phrase and creating
Pouring it in different ways.
yes, and presenting it in different ways, and the emotional aspect of the phrase. Acha, the difference between this and Thumri singing is that in Thumri you will take, like, if it's Saiya Gaye Pardes, in Thumri you would just take Saiya or Pardes, or you can just take a word or the phrase, but the stress is not so much on the phraseology is different. You can just take a word and you can imbue it with emotion, but it can just be a word. Whereas in Dadra, it's different. The lay, the tempo of Dadra is more sprightly than Thumri, and so Dadra is what I draw my music. Even my ghazal, it's basically from Dadra, which is the movement is faster than Thumri.
So, the whole world has heard of Begum Akhtar. Everybody is familiar with her name. But
Ji.
you knew her personally, and she passed away in 75.
No, 74.
She passed away. So
October 74.
just revive or introduce, for the the youth that might be listening to you today on, what made Begum Akhtar great.
This is the amazing thing, that there are some young people who have not heard her music, and yet there are some who have. And the ones who have, without even going into, all the stuff that I just told you about Thumri and things, they still enjoy her music. Because, I mean, there are, for instance, some singers in Bombay, which is a commercial, music center. They are singing a ghazal in the Begum Akhtar style even today, and they are popular. And they, so I mean, she remains in a steadfast way. She remains an icon for ghazal. Even though Thumri singers take her very seriously for her Thumri and Dadra, but her ghazal is taken very seriously even now. So that, as I told you, there are three styles of presenting ghazal. Khayal, Mehdi Hasan, Geet, Jagjit Singh, and Thumri, Begum Akhtar. The Thumri style was Begum Akhtar's.
Right. So, and how do you feel? What do you think is the status of the ghazal in present day society? Are you optimistic that it's thriving, it's alive, or do you?
Meru, earlier I was very distressed. Earlier, now this was say in the 80s and 90s, when I thought ghazal had really nosedived into almost a sort of oblivion. Firstly, bhajan became a popular thing, and that kind of wiped out the craze for ghazal. This was soon after Begum Akhtar had died, Mehdi Hasan Saab had died, and Jagjit Singh was on the scene, kind of light Geet Numa ghazal singer. And so Thumri Ang ghazal certainly was not thriving at that point. And now it is. There are some young ghazal singers who are actually singing, are rerunning Begum Akhtar's, Mere Hum Nafas, Mere Hum Naba. which perhaps they don't even understand all the meanings of the Urdu words, but they're singing it, for instance.
So,
So it's basically, you know, the bol banana. The bol banana is the crux, and the bol banana means the phrasing, you know, the musical phrasing of a textual phrase. The musical phrasing of a textual phrase is what defines Hindustani light classical, whether it is Thumri, Dadra, or Ghazal, or Sufiana. In my case, I'm really loving singing Sufi poetry because it's so close to my heart.
So is it true when the present stops to make sense in life, music provides a little more meaning to life? Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, music can be soothing. It can be a release of your own emotions. There are people who cry. For my friend Shabana Azmi, she often cries when she's listening to a ghazal. So it can be a release of your own emotions. And, you know, I don't think ghazal will ever fade away. You know, it's been there since I think for centuries. I mean, I started in the 9th century, then of course it attained great heights in the 13th century, and even greater heights in the 15th, 18th, to the extent that there is a very beautiful Sufiana ghazal that I sing of someone called Taqi Sahab was his friend, Tulsi Sahab. एक तुलसी साहब थे in the 18th century, and his great pal, his great friend was this Taqi Mian. And they wrote Sufiana Ghazal, which I sing, and you know, it's written in the couplet form. There's a radif and a kafiya. So I mean, it's very much, it's thriving. And then there are then, you know, apart from ghazal, you can also sing. Sometimes I sing Sufi poetry in the Geet Noma style. Like I suddenly found this lovely thing of Kabir. I'll read it out to you. It's really too charming.
पढ़िए.
मैंने तर्ज वर्ज तो उसकी बना दी है, but I'll sing for you another time. So it just the refrain is अरे दिल. That's the refrain.
इरशाद सुनाइए.
अरे दिल उस पार दरिया तेरा प्रीतम खड़िया. This is Kabir, na? So language is that century, 15th century. अरे दिल उस पार दरिया तेरा प्रीतम खड़िया, obviously meaning God. उस मिलन का ध्यान ना धरिया, but you're not thinking of that meeting. So उस पार दरिया तेरा प्रीतम खड़िया, उस मिलन का ध्यान ना धरिया, अरे दिल. So अरे दिल is the refrain. सुन मेरे साजन, beloved, सुन मेरे साजन, सुन मेरे मीता, again friend, ये जीवन में क्या क्या बीता, सिर पे भारी बोझा लीता, आगे कौन छुड़ावेगा. So this is you know, आगे कौन छुड़ावेगा, is that how do I get rid of this burden of sin and guilt and all the rest of it. दास कबीरा कहे समझाई, चला अकेला संग ना कोई, चला अकेला संग, you're alone, just keep remembering that. चला अकेला संग ना कोई, किया अपना पावेगा. Whatever you have done, you're going to get the result of that. And you walk by yourself, you know, so there's nobody else who walks with you. So this is, you know, beautiful poetry. It's archaic and yet so relevant to modern times, to, you know, to human beings everywhere. So I love singing stuff like this. So it's not, I don't restrict myself to ghazal, but of course I love to sing Thumri and Dadra. Dadra is my great passion apart from ghazal. I love Dadra.
I wish you had shared some of your music with us, but there's always
do play a bit of that matlab nikal gaya, you know, the thing that I composed in Masuri years ago, and I sing that in a Dadra style. So you'll hear a bit of the bol banana if you know, pick it up from somewhere in the middle, or wherever you like. But there's bol banana in it, so do give it a listen. Yes. And you'll understand what I mean. So bol banana really means taking a phrase and weaving different musical permutations and combinations within that time, that musical framework.
Absolutely delightful, Rekha. So wonderful talking to you, and thank you so much for talking to The Citizen. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Meru.